You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dave. And behind you, unless I'm entirely mistaken, is a picture of who? It's a light entertainment star.
It's a great actress, actually. It's the great Dandy Nichols, who's probably best known for playing Silly Moo in Till Death Us Do Part, played Mrs. Alf Garnett. And Jonathan Sellers, who we both know well, former art director of Word magazine, who had an absolute fascination with kind of minor characters.
He did. He knew every single member of the cast of On the Buses.
The point of it, there were John Sellers on the day when somebody published a slim volume about Charles Hawtrey. Jonathan Sellers was the first man outside Waterstones, on the day it was published. So I had some birthday. I can't remember what birthday it was. And people gave me various presents. And Jonathan gave me an autographed picture of Dandy Nichols in a frame.
And you had to say, that's just what I've always wanted. Why has that taken so long for that to arrive?
Just what you always wanted, Jonathan.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm delighted to have it. I don't have many autographed pictures. I only have 2 framed autographed pictures in the house, I think. I'm right in saying. One is Dandy Nichols. Do you know who the other one is?
Is it a pop star?
It's beyond a pop star. It's a genuine, absolute copper-bottomed entertainment Hollywood legend.
Oh, right. So it's a film star. It's not Bob Dylan.
It's Fred Astaire.
Good God.
That's quite cool, isn't it?
How did you get that?
I bought it years ago in a Hollywood kind of memorabilia store. And it's a very beautiful thing. It's a beautiful picture.
Can you remember what you paid for it?
And well, I paid a significant sum. I mean, I can't remember exactly how much it was. It was enough to make me believe it was real. But
absolutely. Well, you'll hope it was real.
Who knows? Who knows? It's a beautiful picture, and it's Fred Astaire, and I adore Fred Astaire. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm still thrilled about that.
That's brilliant.
So we're going to start with the Stack Waddy game.
Yeah, I'm going to. Okay. 5 country and western song titles.
All right. Okay.
4 of these are real. 1 is fictitious. Can you spot the ringer? Number 1. Thanks to the cat house, I'm in the doghouse with you.
That's real. Right. That's real.
Oh, okay. Well,
okay. All right, go on.
All right. Number 2. If you were a bottle of bourbon, I'd be buying you a ring. All right. Third one is you can't have your cake. Sorry, you can't have your Kate and Edith too. You can't have your Kate and Edith too. Okay?
Very good.
Which reminds me of the Robert Wyatt, Ruth is Stranger Than Richard. But anyway, all right. The 4th one is, she made toothpicks out of the timber of my heart. Okay. And the 5th one is, when you leave, walk out backwards, so I'll think you're walking in.
Okay, I'm gonna plump for the one about the toothpicks being the made up one.
Oh right, no, it's real.
Oh well, there you go.
That's real. Oh, I'm so pleased I've actually won for one. So she made toothpicks out of the timber of my heart. It was by Homer Haynes and Jethro Burns. Came out in 1962. That's great. Thanks to the cat house, I'm in the doghouse with you. Is a Johnny Paycheck song. Yeah, when you walk out backwards, when you leave, walk out backwards. So I think you're walking in. It's by Bill Anderson. You can't have your Kate and Edith too is a Statler Brothers record.
Yeah, cool.
1967. And if you were a bottle of bourbon, I'd be buying you a ring. Made up by me. That was classic.
That's very good.
That was superb.
That's very good. Wait, is the song "How Can I Miss You If You Won't Go Away" real?
Yeah, Dan Hicks. That's Dan Hicks. That's a Dan Hicks and his Hot Licks song. That's a very good. Along with my other absolute favourite, which I think was an Eggs Over Easy album. Do you remember that one? I'm going to put a bar in the back of my car and drive myself to drink.
Is that Commander Cody? No?
Maybe they did a version of it. I don't know. I think that's
very good.
It's very funny.
Was Drop Kick Me Jesus through the goalpost
of life? That's
true.
That's a real.
That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
Was From You to the Gutter Is Not Up. Is that real? I don't wish to know.
I
don't
know.
want to. Okay, but I'm going to come back here.
Okay, no, I've got one more that I can remember, which was just so brilliantly country and western. It was, I think it was, if the phone don't ring, that'll be me, which is just brilliant, isn't it? That's a mournful understatement.
Kind of songs that were invented in bars and the title written on cocktail napkins, and then gone off and worked out the song later, because so many great country and western songs come from just some smart ass comment made in a bar where somebody thought there's a song in that. Just go back.
It's a bit like Smith's songs, that once you've got the title, I mean, the song's less important, really.
It is.
We're still talking about these things now because
we hate it when our friends become successful. You don't have to write the song, really. You just write the title. That does the job. Okay, I'm coming back at you. These are 3 British instrumental groups of the early 60s, okay? In the era of the Shadows and so forth. Well, no, actually, okay, I'm gonna change that. These are 3 instrumental groups, right? 3 British instrumental groups. One of them is not real. Okay. Electric Coconut, the Flea Rackers, the Silhouettes. Electric Coconut, the Flea Wreckers, the Silhouettes. One of those is not real.
Well, the Silhouettes sounds completely real. I can see their album sleeve now, and that sounds very The Ventures, The Shadows. Silhouettes got to be, I think. Well, the next, you're being very clever here, and it's a play on the Shadows. What was it? The Flea Wreckers.
Yeah.
Flea Wreckers. That is so unlikely it couldn't have been made up. So I'm going to plump for the first one, which I think was the Electric Coconuts, because that doesn't sound British. You said they were British. That sounds...
You got it wrong.
Maybe because I'm thinking Electric British. Oh, I've got it wrong. Okay,
you got it wrong.
Silhouettes.
The Silhouettes are the made-up one.
Oh, very good.
Coconut were a kind of synth group of the early 70s, I think. Flea Wreckers, which I still think is the strangest name for a group ever, because it's spelled FLEEREKKERS. How weird is that? The Flea Wreckers. I think Mickey Waller, who was later a member of Jeff Beck's group, is that right? He was, wasn't he? And I think he was a member of the Flea Wreckers. I think it was one of those groups that...
What does that even mean?
No idea.
Stopping your escape, stopping you going away somewhere. I mean,
possibly insane. Flea, as in the the insect, the flying creature, wrecking. God knows.
It's spelled wrong. It's not spelled that way.
It's deliberately spelled wrong.
Yeah.
It's the most
as in the Beatles.
Stupid name. It's like as in the Beatles.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's the Stack Waddy game. Oh, you and I were both reading a chapter from the Woody Allen book. Autobiography, which is called Apropos of Nothing, which I want to get hold of the full thing and read it all.
So do I.
I was absolutely fascinated, and I was very struck. The bit I was reading, he was talking about his early days, pre-teen and teenager, and getting into the entertainment business and so forth. But he has one tangent. He says, "Look. People think that because I wear specs that I'm an intellectual. I'm not at all, He said, women have always thought that I've got more sophisticated taste than I have. I always went out with girls who wanted to talk about Ibsen and Strindberg, and all I wanted to talk about was jazz and baseball, because his whole point is I'm quite lowbrow. And anyway, he goes through a list of things that he's either never read or seen, or he's read and seen and didn't particularly like, and he was just refreshingly unconventional, and he put when I came to the sentence where it said, "I don't find some like it hot funny," I wanted to punch the air with triumph, because I thought that's what I've been thinking for years, thinking I was the only person in the world.
No, it's hilarious.
No,
you don't find it funny. You're not laughing throughougugh uproariously.
Not at all. It's
all those lines. I always get the fuzzy end of the lollipop. The Tony Curtis's Cary Grant impersonation when you see it on the beach, absolutely incredible. Jack Lemmon, every facial expression from Jack Lemmon, and Jack Lemmon as a woman, just seeing that clunky, kind of awkward, ridiculous way he carries himself is just riotously, rib-ticklingly funny.
Well, I love all the people involved. I love Billy Wilder and Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon and so forth. But it just doesn't make me laugh. It's a fabulously polished, beautiful thing. I can see all that, but it doesn't actually make me laugh. It doesn't get through to me. That's possibly my failing rather than the film, you know. And I think that, you know, it's not said often enough. You know, people, you know, sometimes you get people say, "Oh, I can never trust anybody who didn't like P.G. Wodehouse or whatever," you know. And it's like, it's nonsense, you know. Some things just appeal to you.
Yeah,
some things don't. It's subjective. So here's my 3 things, okay,
Go on.
that leave me cold. And one, some like it hot. It just leaves me cold. The other is love's forever changes. In fact, love generally, you know, every 2 years I try again with love because I know that everybody adores them, and you know, I know what the scene they came from and all that stuff, and I pretty much like all the groups around them in some way. I may not be passionate about them, but I can kind of appreciate them. But I listen to Forever Changes and I just think, oh dear, this just lies.
Oh no, it's a fantastic record.
It just doesn't. It
sort
just
of
doesn't
strangely
get
baroque
through
and soulful and terribly.
Well, it's maybe
moving
maybe the strangely baroque thing is what I don't like. That might actually be it. It just doesn't appeal to me in my kind of gut at all, or on my heart, which is kind of where pop music strikes you in one of those two.
I'll tell you a problem with love is that you don't have, I never thought about this, but you don't have much connection with any of them. In fact, I'm not sure if I can, apart from Arthur Lee, I'm not sure if I can even name the other 3 members, but you don't have much understanding of who they are, much association with them, do you? So there's no other way in on a kind of personal level.
Yeah, that may be it. So, you know, I Something Like a Heart leaves me cold. Forever Changes leaves me cold. And I got another one to join the pantheon. It's a relatively new thing. But when this book was published, it got such rave reviews. I thought, I want to read that. I read a lot of books, and I do read a lot of, you know, fiction, celebrated fiction. If something gets the Booker Prize or whatever, I tend to read it. And I read this book. I got halfway through this book, and I thought, I was reminded of the old joke, and this is not a book to be cast aside lightly. It should be thrown hurled with great force.
But Go on, what is the book?
The book has recently been turned into an endless television adaptation, which everybody seems to love. I haven't seen the telly thing. I'm just going on the book, which is Normal People by Sally Rooney.
Oh, right.
Which hats off all around the world. This young genius. I just thought, I'm reading this. What is this? It's this young adult fiction. This is so kind of flat and self-absorbed and incidentless. And also, here's my most ringing criticism. Here's the most damning thing I can say about any book, actually, which I would also extend to Just Kids by Patti Smith. And Patti Smith's a very good writer and remembers lots of things. But both that and Normal People have one thing in common. They have no sense of humor at all. No sense of humor.
Patti Smith's not blessed with a sense of humor.
Not a sense of humor. How can you have the career, the life that Patti Smith has had, and not at any stage go, God, that was a laugh. That was a bit strange. That went a bit far. None of that at all.
She's got none. I still haven't forgiven her for the Q Awards. Do you remember that? I got her to come to the Q Awards, and I got Polly Harvey to introduce her. Polly Harvey, a massive, massive fan. Took immense amounts of wrangling. Polly Harvey, terribly nervous, not used to doing these things, doing us a real favour, got up and said, what a wonderful woman. She said, this is the woman who made me pick up the guitar and made me want to write songs. Patti Smith then got up and said, the one thing I can't stand is people who just imitated me throughout my life, and ripped off my ideas or whatever. I pretty much said that. Do you remember? You were there. And then cast her a kind of narrow and appraising sideways glance. I thought, that is very, very unkind.
It's very wrong.
But no sense of humour. That's interesting about it. But Normal People, it's a lot of that. Is some of that to do with, is that an age thing? Because I've never liked Little Britain. Everyone says Little Britain's fantastic. I can't stand Little Britain. I can't stand. I just don't even like David Walliams.
Well, you've got your way now, haven't you? It's been,
yeah, that's true. It's been removed.
They've come
that's
up
a bit harsh. I felt really sorry for them.
They come up the drive with flaming torches and pitchforks. They've driven Little Britain out into
dragged
out into darkness. Makes me think that there is a possibility to start a TV channel right now called Band Television, where slowly, they're just going to squeeze all this stuff out of the main channels, which are Netflix and BBC iPlayer, and they'll
make it even more curious and attractive. That's a really good idea. Band TV, brilliant. Like all those people used to go all the way to Paris to watch A Clockwork Orange and cinemas.
So those are my three. Some Like It Hot, Forever Changes, and Normal People. Have you got anything?
God, well, I mean, apart from, as I say, nothing major. I never got The Mighty Boosh. I never got The League of Gentlemen. I never got Robin Williams. I know everyone says he's absolutely fantastic, but I always found him tense and unnerving and completely unfunny. Monty Python, was it funny? Did you think at the time that it was? I didn't find it funny. I found I ought to find it funny. I like the concept of it. The principle of it was funny. I don't remember laughing at it once. They're terribly dated now. Queen, well, as in the rock band. I know this is entirely subjective, but Queen have never moved me. Utterly unemotional. Wizard of Oz, nightmarish, scary, no good. The Mona Lisa, Dave. Sorry, overrated. The Mona Lisa is fantastically dull and uneventful, isn't it? If you actually go and see it in person, it's even worse because it's tiny.
What would it cost her to smile, for goodness sake?
Why did cheer up? Oh my God! Look at the bright. Turn that frown upside down. The one absolutely classic concept that I've never got, I think, is Ken Dodd. I don't know why.
Right.
Is that because I'm Southern? Ken Dodd, just because he doesn't represent any culture, he has no cultural significance for me. I don't know. Is Ken Dodd funny? I mean, what's that great line about his teeth? He said, "My teeth." He said, "I can eat an apple through a tennis racket." I think that line is funny, but I think that was written by Frank Muir.
The thing about Ken Dodd was that he gave you too much volume, and therefore, the proportion of funny was relatively small. Because he over-delivered. Years ago, this must be 30 years ago, he played the London Palladium. And I said to my wife, "Come on, we're going to see Ken Dodd." And we did.
You actually went?
We went. And because I remember seeing him as a teenager on holiday in Blackpool or whatever. And we went, and he was on stage for like 3 hours. He just exhausted you. So even if it was the funniest thing in the world, you wouldn't have been laughing all the time. By then you'd have given in. My favorite Ken Dodd thing, do you remember? There used to be a Radio 4 series called In the Psychiatrist's Chair, presented by a very good Irish presenter called Dr. Anthony Clare. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Which used to plumb the kind of psyche of celebrities. And Ken Dodd had the controversial, income tax case,
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd been keeping money under his bed or whatever.
I think he'd literally been keeping cash under his mattress.
I think he did.
I'd rather admire him for that.
And they did the interview. Claire did the interview. And he talked about early life and working and so forth. And then when he obviously thought it was safe in the interview, he said, I want to talk to you about money. And Ken Dodd just looked at Pete and said, "Why, have you got some?" Which still makes me laugh.
That's very clever.
The very idea that he's going to give him some spare cash in the middle of the interview. So Ken Dodd is a little bit like Monty Python. Here's the key thing in his defense and their defense. They're funny ideas which you carry around with you. You don't necessarily enjoy the experience of watching it or receiving it the first time, but it sits in the back of your mind. And, Monty Python planted hundreds of really funny ideas that are still really funny.
That's true.
But you wouldn't necessarily wish to, sit and watch it. I can't look at a box of chocolates, with a little plan inside the lid of what all they are.
I'm thinking steel bolts are going to come out and pierce either cheek.
See, spring surprise. When you bite into it, steel bolts spring out and plunge through both cheeks. That joke landed in my life in about 1969, and it's still making me laugh.
It is good.
So that that's a hell
fun.
of a thing, So.
And their albums were great. The albums were fantastic. The album with three grooves. Do you remember that? A single album with 3 grooves.
Yeah.
God, that was brilliant. You turned over the seconds. I can still remember that. Probably, having been on the old jazz ciggies at the time, I can remember us turning the side over, dropping in the needle, and the side only taking 15 minutes. We put the needle. We thought, that's very short. Put it back again. It's a completely different 15 minutes. I can remember being freaked out.
You're listening to the Word Podcast. It's a lockdown lock-in.
Let's pay tribute to our Patreon supporters, those people who've taken advantage of the opportunity to come on board this magnificent enterprise and have the reward of A, the glow of knowing that they've done good work, B, being able to watch you and me, Mark, as well as simply listen to us, and also to be able to listen to the podcast earlier than everybody else can do. And also,
and the quiz
to take part in the Friday evening 6 o'clock happy hour quiz, which we conduct via Zoom. Another one of those coming up at the end of this week. And furthermore, also to get involved in our podcast Gold series, where we dust off legendary old podcasts from the past, review them, top and tail them, and put them out there into the world. So all those could be yours if you go to patreon.com/word in your ear, as these people whose names Mark's about to read out did.
They did. We have some new names, and thanks very much to all of you. Much, much appreciated. The first name, I think I'm pronouncing this right, is Paul Gagan. And apologies if that's not pronounced right. It's a complicated spelling. Also Paul Coleman and Brian Hansel, Alfred Daniel, Stephen Clark, Ronnie Day, Gareth Durant, Ian Muir, Graham Crossley, Gavin Rogers, Tony Quinn, and Jonathan Hodes. We're immensely grateful to all of you. Thank you so much.
Very grateful. And if you'd like to
Don't miss the quiz.
If you'd like to join them, patreon.com/word in your ear for further details. What were you telling me about Terry Hooley?
Terry, there's a movie being made of Terry Hooley's life, a biopic, which I think is on iPlayer at the moment. And Terry Hooley, really interesting guy. And I knew quite a bit about him. I was fascinated by the story. He was born in Northern Ireland in 1948. Tragically lost an eye in an accident when he was a kid. Somebody shot the bow and arrow accident when he was 6. And this focused his interest in music. Music was the only thing that motivated him and seemed to give him any pleasure. And so he grew up in that whole era of the show bands and the hippie bands. And he formed a record shop. He opened a record shop in Belfast. And he's selling, old Rory Gallagher records, etc. And it's one of the few places where the Catholics and the Protestants can it's the height of the Troubles, can get together. And then he's converted to punk rock. And there's a great scene where he goes to this pub in the Pound in Oxford Street and is completely converted to the whole new sound of what's happening in Northern Ireland. Richard Dormer, incidentally, plays Terry, and his wife is played by Jodie Whittaker, who's the woman who went on to be in Doctor Who. And he starts to put out records, but he starts a label, Good Vibrations, puts out records by Rudy and Protex and the Outcasts. And then the key event of the film is that the Undertones arrive. And they insist that he listens to their demo tapes. And he records them. And everybody in the studio thinks that Teenage Kicks is the most extraordinary thing. They've never heard anything like it. And it was really touching. And there's a scene where they all get together and they do these personal, individual DIY wrappings of each of these singles. And he takes a big bag of them to London. And he meets a load of kind of hopeless, kind of cretinous vaudeville villain, cloth-eared record executives who tell him how rubbish the record is. And then he remembers John Peel, who he absolutely adores. He's great here. He said, I'll send one to Peel. And of course, famously, Peel played the record. Do you remember he played it twice in a row? You can still hear this on YouTube.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of just caused the whole Undertone story to take off. And to some extent, some of the massive amount of success that Northern Ireland bands had at the time. And it made me think, are there other people who should be there should be a movie about? Are there other kind of small legendary figures in the music industry? I mean, I'm surprised there hasn't been one about Richard Branson, the documentary, I don't think there has, although Richard Branson quite a hard man to like for a lot of people.
Well, but also didn't have a record player.
Didn't have a record player.
Didn't have a record player. So somewhat difficult to position him as because traditionally these films always follow the same plan, don't they? True believer out there, passionately involved with music. People who work for record companies, the suits, not interested in music. Not true at all. Absolutely not true at all.
Oh, no, I'm sure there's been liberties taken with this story.
Record companies, certainly at the time, 77, 78, they were desperate to sign new punk acts. They were not interested in anybody but new punk acts, So to paint that kind of tension, I think, is a bit of a distortion. But that's how those.
No, I'm sure they're playing that very much for to make a dramatic movie out of it.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's quite likely that he would have got to go ahead on the budget because Terry Hooley is Irish and it plays well in America. People adore the Irish, don't they? The Irish roots.
But has anybody made a film? I may be saying something stupid here. Has anybody made the Berry Gordy story? I'm not aware that they have.
Not to my knowledge.
Because he's still alive, which may somewhat cramp people's style. But, that's the independent record man to end them all, isn't it? The man who invented Motown Records and, turned it into this enormous...
Would that be better as a documentary rather than a biopic? Because with a biopic, the problem is you've got to believe that this succession of people that you're seeing walking in are actually, the rock stars.
If you can find an actor to play Fergal Sharkey, I would say you can find an actor to play Diana Ross.
No, quite convincingly. I thought there's one person I thought that you could make a biopic or a documentary about was Joe Boyd.
All right.
Joe Boyd's a good story. Do you think? Harvard intellectual, hung around Greenwich Village, met Bob Dylan, tells that great story.
That's a good scene. That's a good scene.
It's a really good scene where it's in his White Bicycles book where he meets this girl at a club and he's clearly on a promise. And he says, "Do you want to come back to my place?" Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be back there. I'll be back a little later. He gives her the address, and when he gets back, Bob Dylan, was that right? Was staying? Am I right?
She'd gone to bed with Bob Dylan.
She'd gone to bed, or had she met Bob Dylan in the bar?
She brought him home.
And brought him home. She had. That's right.
Pretty much left him a note saying, "You understand, surely.
You understand. I'm in the other bedroom with Bob Dylan." That's right. That would make a great. That's a wah moment, isn't it? It's wavy line for mouth.
Yeah, you should start writing the script tomorrow.
But I think he's a great story, and he came over here and he formed the UFO Club and all that stuff with Pink Floyd, and he discovered Nick Drake and Fairport String Band. And who knows? There may even have been romantic liaisons with some of the stars that he was involved with. We don't.
I'm sure there would be if the film were made. The film wouldn't be made if there weren't romantic liaisons.
Fergal Sharkey, interesting character, because he's retired. How many people do that? He's simply retired from the rock music business, isn't he?
Well,
he will never go back, and he's now. Well, he was in the music industry, and he's last seen kind of campaigning on behalf of environmental issues.
He does.
Like
I think he does a lot of walking. He leads a lot of not the Ramblers Association, but that kind of thing. He's very much involved in paths, I think.
Yeah, he is
in rural areas.
I really admire him for that.
No, absolutely.
His whole thing is, look, it's time for us guys to get out of the way and let a load of other new musicians through. And also, he's right, because to go back now, it probably would be disappointing. I mean, there'd be lots of money in it, and there'd be certainly a market for it, I'm sure. But he's right to not kind of burst the bubble. What do you think?
Well, I'm always fascinated by any rock star who retires, because my feeling is they never do. And so it's so nice to be able to observe one who walked away with his dignity intact, It's good to see.
This is a Word Lockdown special. Call it herd immunity.
Do you know one of the things I find odd in this situation? We've got lots of time at home and, so there's tons of television. And, there's all these multi-part series of dramas that I know are really good. Everybody's told me are really good. And I just can't make myself watch them. What I end up doing, I don't even watch them on the television. I end up here in my workroom, tooling about looking at stuff on YouTube and Netflix. And I end up watching the same 2 or 3 old sitcoms that I've watched hundreds of times before.
What you mean?
Again,
Actual episodes or series?
I can do the episodes because you don't do. Yeah, I suppose you've put your finger on one of the attractions of it. You don't have to follow a plot because it's not going from one episode to the next.
No,
It's not
self-contained.
really self-contained. And these are the ones I watch. I watch The US Office because I love it. I watch Faulty Towers, and I watch Parks and Recreation.
Can't go wrong.
And I watch Schitt's
Fabulous.
Creek. And that's it. That's the lot. I just go round and round and round again, the same thing. Because
so is that you're just getting a degree of comfort from this, presumably?
I'm getting humour because they're all funny. I mean, varying degrees. I mean, Faulty Towers is still laugh out loud, genuinely funny. You know, even though you've seen it hundreds of times before, you think, my God. And do you know why Faulty Towers is? Can I bore you for a second? Why Faulty Towers is so good, which is beyond John Cleese and Connie Booth and so forth, is the quality of all the actors in the small parts.
Yeah,
you sit and watch the Waldorf Salad or whatever it's called, and that guy who plays the American tourist, you know, he's putting his heart and soul into that job. And that's what gives it the incredible drama. You know, Bernard Cribbins, hotel inspectors.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Jones Sanderson as they kind of, what do you expect? Herds of wildebeest. Jessica across the plain. They're all just brilliant. All of those people doing absolutely top work. So that's why.
And the other thing is the tension that he builds in, because the plots are nearly always the same, aren't they? That some incident happens immediately. And like the builders, when the whole thing is he will not pay for the expensive builders. He's going to economise by having the cheap bag, having an O'Reilly. Cup of tea and a biscuit. O'Reilly. The Orally men, you know. And because he's done that, the entire house of cards constructs, and this tension's going to collapse at any moment. He won't go back. And the other one, which I thought was amazing, do you remember the anniversary? When he will not acknowledge that he's remembered it's their 15th wedding anniversary, just out of pride, really. Also, he has actually organised a secret party for her. But then she storms off thinking he's forgotten. And actually, it's terribly unfair because, for once, his heart is almost in the right place. You know? But that terrible tension, he has to get that woman in the dark, half darkness to pretend to be her in the bed. Oh, no.
So that's genuinely laugh out loud funny. Schitt's Creek, which is, for anybody who hasn't seen it, I do like it. I mean, it came out about two years ago, Canadian production done by Eugene Levy, you know, and his son Daniel, about a family of multimillionaires who suddenly are put on their uppers and have to go and live in a town in the middle of nowhere called Schitt's Creek, which is not so much laugh out loud funny, but beautifully observed and beautifully acted. And Parks and Recreation I never get sick of. And the American Office, you've never seen the American Office, is that right?
I've never seen it, no. I don't know why.
Well, that's a joy you've got to...
Is it really different from because the British
it's American sitcom, so it's different. It's designed to run for years. It's more sentimental, it's more glossy. But it's... in its way, it's no less good. And Steve Carell is just absolutely astonishing as the boss, as the Ricky Gervais figure in that. Oh, you should go and watch that. So that's all I'm doing.
But the quality of those American sitcoms, the quality of writing, I can still remember lines. I can remember a line in Cheers where somebody walks into the bar, said, "I want a drink," and they said, "What do you got?" He says, "Coffee." He said, "Got anything stronger?" He said, "Yesterday's coffee." You know, it's just lovely. That's a tiny little throwaway line, but it's just so clever. There's a bit in Seinfeld, you know, Seinfeld where about the airline hostess, where he's just observing the airline hostess. Do you remember that?
Oh,
the airline hostess goes. There's that moment where she goes into club class or first class, probably. She's got her back to all those people. There, you can hear the chinking of glasses. And you can hear the merriment as their meal is already being served. The plane hasn't even taxied out yet. And she's looking down into cattle class. She about to pull the curtains across. She gives you that look as if to say, if you'd only worked harder, which is just brilliant. And also Friends. You remember the brilliant line where Courtney Cox and Jennifer Aniston. Courtney's discovered she's gone shopping with someone else. She said, "I'm so sorry. I was thinking of you all the time."
Oh, absolutely. Now,
Deep.
No, she says it's brilliant. That is, she discovers that she's gone to Bloomingdale's without
Bloomingdale's with another girl.
And she said, "We only went once."
That's right.
And I was thinking of you all the time.
All the time. I know she's been unfaithful. It's fantastic.
Oh, it's brilliant. So those are the things I just end up watching again and again and again before launching into these kind of 14-part dramas, because I sort of don't feel up to it, really. I don't want to be, I don't want to go the highs and lows, you know. I just want to keep level, you know.
Fair
the
enough.
level of
Understandable.
comedy. It's absolutely fine for me. But anyway, we've been providing our own award-winning television spectacular in the last few months, haven't we?
Now crept into 40, 41, 42 of them, I think, something like that. 42,
like,
Word in Your Attic.
Well, it's a Word in Your Attic. I mean, there may be people who haven't come across this. We started this in very early days of lockdown. I think Mark Billingham was probably our
Mark
first.
Billingham was the first.
Was the first guest, because he was at the time doing a kind of Abbey Road jigsaw, I think, or Sergeant Pepper. I can't remember which one it was. So we thought, let's do a bit of show and tell via Zoom with Mark at home, going through his stuff, and we did that, and then we moved on. We had Jude Rogers, we had Paul Gorman talking about Malcolm McLaren. We had
Danny Kelly.
Danny Baker, Danny Kelly. We had Tracy McLeod the other day. All kinds of people.
Grogan.
Yes, absolutely. They're all there on YouTube. You know, if you just go on YouTube /Word in Your Ear, you'll find them there. And, you know, they're quite an interesting little...
No, fascinating. And they go off at such tangents. We did one the other day with Andy Partridge. I think it's up, isn't it? The Andy Partridge one for XTC. Yeah. And it was the most incredible thing. You said, I think, at one point that he ought to have a program called Andy Partridge Remembers the 50s. Because it's all about the analogue world with which he is still obsessed. It's all about the cereal, the toys, the free gifts, cereal packets he used to collect. It's about him making little slideshows. Do you remember? Projecting them on the roof of on the ceiling of his room while he's listening to music and being time traveling while listening to the third year band and playing records at the wrong speed just to entertain himself. And collecting radiator caps from cars, and all the and the other thing about those little tiny figures, the Airfix figures, little models, and having these little games with the Eighth Army, the Cowboys and Indians, and the paratroops against the farm animals, and the Africa Corps of the U.S. Marines, or whatever it was, And I thought that was fascinating.
So it's
the whole world.
Basically, we say to people, just bring along, have a bit of show and tell ready. So ideally, on their desk, they've got some kind of, oh crap or whatever. That's got to be a Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones. Stuff you can talk about, and it's amazing the stuff that people have got, and it's amazing to talk to them, and they're so grateful at the end of it. Thank God, I always wondered why I kept this piece of crap on my desk, and now finally it's found a use, thanks to Word in Your Attic.
One of them, which we just recorded this morning, has the most extraordinary and original artifact. It's going to contain a fag butt left by David Bowie at a party.
There you go.
Which she collected and put in a plastic bag and has kept, as you say, for this very moment, to air on Word in Your Attic.
Where else could you get this quality of entertainment, ladies and gentlemen? There you go. Word in Your Attic.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.